Warning: the following content may not be suitable for all listeners and contains crude humor that may be offensive to some. Listener discretion is advised. This is Satire Is Not Dead. This is Harvey, your host. Welcome back to more of Satire Is Not Dead, and that is a little bit of Five-Finger Death Punch, singing Generation Dead. I considered it, I thought it would be fitting to play that at the opening of this podcast because I've been watching the activity of this, surrounding this, trying to push through the stimulus package that will bring relief to some people in this country who have been really devastated and hurt and are bootstrapped by, or hamstrung, I guess you could say. This whole pandemic thing, you know, there's people that's been put out of work because of the restrictions that are placed in some cities. And I know, like I said, there are some people that need it, but there are ones out there. I'm kind of explaining why I chose Generation Dead. It's at the opening snippet. There's the young liberal voters out there who are actually looking forward to getting this stimulus check, they call it. Right now, it's looking like people are going to get $600, a $600 check, which really, if you do the math over the period of time people have been out of work, it really, what is it going to do? And I know there are people that really do need it, but what irks me are the ones that don't need it, who are out there screaming for it to be increased. I think they want it to be boosted to $2,000 for it to be, more helpful and what have you, whatever you want to call it. And the ones, I can only go by what I'm seeing on social media. There are people, and you can tell the ones that need it and the ones that don't. They're young liberal voters out there, and probably some older liberal voters. And to be fair, there are probably some, in some cases, young conservative and older conservative voters that want it to be, increased. And I'm not going to get too political this time because I've been kind of moving away from what I intended this podcast to be, but I have to say this about it. They are the ones that totally live in the here and now. I've seen comments on different threads on Facebook talking about what they're going to do with the money. And it's not pay their bills. It's, stuff like buy electronics. I'll be able to do this and do that. But they really don't, they're not thinking in the future. There's nothing free that comes from the government. And we're going to be paying for this shit for a long time. I'll never see it paid off because, from what I understand, the national deficit at this point is $27 trillion. And if they get this this stimulus package in its current state, it goes through, it'll boost the national deficit to $30 trillion, which is an inconceivable number. Really, it's just mind-boggling. And honestly, I don't think this country will ever see a reduction. I'm 52 years old. I haven't ever seen it go backwards. And I'm sure there are instances of it actually being reduced to some extent, but by and large, no, I haven't seen it. And I don't think, I'm kind of contradicting the point I'm making with these younger people, but it's their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren that are going to be dealing with this And it's, sooner or later, the economy is just going to collapse, mathematically. You can't just keep doing this. The value is going to be, the dollar, is going to become so devalued that it's just going to be basically worthless. So, that's what irks me about this whole stimulus thing. I wish they had a way, and it's impossible to determine who actually needs it and could, flesh out who to send it to instead of just broad brushing it, the entire country with this stimulus check. Because it's unfair, the people who are going to be wasteful with it and who actually don't need it. There's people who are in certain industries, like the one I'm in, that we haven't missed any work, and I'm fortunate, and there's a lot of fortunate people, but there's a lot of unfortunate people who are being really hurt by this. So can you actually send it back and say, I don't want it? I have no idea. I don't know how the system works. I think, the way this, as convoluted as this economy and our government is, that's probably not even an option. I don't know. But regardless, that's why I chose Generation Dead to open the show. And another thing that I've been, a couple of days ago I saw, it's as far as this whole pandemic thing is going, and I really was just like, I'm done with it. Take care of yourself. Be careful in crowded places, and be respectful of others, and we'll get through it, and everything will be fine. And this vaccine thing is coming out. It was yesterday, day before yesterday. I saw these videos that were put out on YouTube or social media. It's probably not just YouTube, probably more like TikTok, which is kind of the popular video stupid platform to do nonsense. Of these medical staffers getting together and make these synchronized music videos, them dancing in parking lots and having something to do about, I don't know, try and be more upbeat during this time or whatever. But the whole, I don't know, I can't tell you keywords to go look up to find it, but I saw it and I watched it a couple times, and I just can't help but think, I was looking at it and going, this looks like socialist propaganda. It's so contradictory to what these medical staffers are being worked, and they're exhausted, and they work long hours, and there's not enough people. They're short-staffed, but they have time to go out in the parking lot. And it's not just somebody standing on the ground using their phone. These are wide-angle shots from above their heads, I can't tell you how many, but it had to be high enough off the ground to get a large crowd of people dancing, medical staff, unless they weren't real medical, staffers. I don't know. But it just looked like something you'd see coming out of a socialist country, trying to, I don't know. I know it's meant to be a morale booster, but it just doesn't look right. There's something that is really wrong with it. And then there was another video of these hospital employees. I did these in a hospital. They would take a rubber glove, put it over one of their hands, and make a fist. And what they were doing was keeping their middle finger out of the rubber middle finger of the glove. And they would blow into the glove at their wrist, and it would flip the middle finger up in the glove. It would inflate it, and, you like the way you would flip someone off with your middle finger. And what they would say after they did that is, hey, COVID, fuck you, or something like that. Nurses, medical professionals doing this. Not just one, not just two, there were several. And I've seen people lose their jobs over a hell of a lot less than that. It's just bizarre. I mean, honestly, it doesn't make sense. I know people that have died. My wife knows people that have died from it. It's a real thing, but what the hell is surrounding it that just makes it feel like nonsense? And whatever, the stuff that they're doing is nonsense. So anyway, I just had to point that out because I was just looking at it going, there's something wrong here. there's really something wrong. And I don't know. It bothers me. I hope if you can go find it. You may have seen it already. It's just bizarre. So anyway, I'm back after another long break, and Christmas has come and gone, and I hope everyone has had a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday, and hope everyone's healthy and happy. I fully intended last week to put out a podcast, but the industry that I work in, I'll just say I work in the service industry. Last week, at the beginning of the week, it was clear to me how the week was going to go. And it just got worse and worse through the week up until I got off at noon on Christmas Eve day. And I was off until Monday, which is nice. But the days leading up to noon on Christmas Eve day, was just absolute madness. People were going nuts. They were calling for this and calling for that, and there was a cold front coming, a strong cold front, which is it's kind of a big deal down here in the South because it doesn't get very cold here. And by strong cold front, I mean it was in the mid-30s. They had forecasted it to be colder than that, but it didn't happen. But down here, it rivals, well, I shouldn't say rivals, but it's almost as bad as when a hurricane is approaching the coast. People start going out, making panic calls to our company, and people in the store. Of course, it was, right before Christmas. People are buying shit up off the shelves left and right. But it's just the whole attitude of when this cold front is coming, everyone freaks out. And I don't get it. I understand kind of why people act that way, but it was just that last week, the reason I couldn't put out a podcast, I was just too tired. And, the week, if you've ever seen the movie Requiem for a Dream, the end of the movie, the whole sequence of chaotic events, that's what last week felt like to me. It was just absolutely nuts. And, we would get calls like some customers would, there's times when we're out there making deliveries that you miss a stop. So you have to go, turn around, and come back, all that stuff. So people would call our office and say, he passed my house. He passed me right by and didn't even bother to come check on me. Fucking calm down. Everybody will get to you. It's just not going to be right when you want. And that's how the whole week was. It was just, and it's exhausting. I mean, most days we didn't have time to stop and eat lunch, but that was the whole reason I couldn't put out one last week. I mean, I could have done one, but it'd have been like one of those 2 a.m. Sessions before I was done. No, it's just too hard to do and be productive the next day. And last week was just too crazy to be sleep deprived trying to do my job. So here I am. We have one more holiday to go, which is New Year's, and I think there's another cold front coming. I hope it's not as drastic and panic-inducing as the last one, but I think we're going to get a lot of rain, so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. All I can do is hang on and do my best. But anyway, didn't want to. The last few podcasts I did were, highly political, and I did a lot of kind of in-depth explaining of things that are happening in this country, and I really have moved away. And I thought it was important to do that, but I'm trying to get back and move back towards what I originally intended for this podcast, which, as it wanted it to be a distraction and try to be funny and maybe entertaining, and get your mind off of what's happening. There's so much happening. If you sit there and just watch the news and read social media all the time and never think about or do anything else or listen to anything else, you'll get depressed, and it's not healthy. So I'm going back to what I originally intended to do with this podcast. And so we're going to do that today. And the way I'm going to start is there was in the 1990s, there was I call it a case involving a young woman by the name of Terri Schiavo. And I'm going to give you a history of this whole medical case and give you the details and explain to you why. And hopefully it'll be entertaining by the time I get to the end of this segment, and you'll understand what I'm doing. And what I'm going to let you listen to later is not something I did. It was another program that produced it years and years ago, and I thought it was very funny. I just really wanted to showcase it because it is very funny and it is inappropriate, which is most of the stuff I do, except whenever I was doing the whole political thing. So anyway, let's get into it. The Terri Schiavo case was a right-to-die legal case in the United States from 1990 to 2005, involving Teresa Marie Schiavo, born December 3rd, 1963, and died March 31st, 2005. She was a woman in an irreversible, persistent vegetative state, and her husband and legal guardian argued that Schiavo would not have wanted prolonged artificial life support without the prospect of recovery, and elected to remove her feeding tube. Well, her parents disputed her husband's assertions and challenged her medical diagnosis, the patient's medical diagnosis, arguing in favor of artificial nutrition and hydration. It was a highly publicized and prolonged series of legal challenges presented by her parents, which ultimately involved state and federal politicians up to the level of President George W. Bush, caused a 7-year delay before Schiavo's feeding tube was ultimately removed. Now, this woman, and to say persistent vegetative state, she was conscious, but she couldn't do anything. She was in a vegetative state. On February 25th, 1990, at age 26, she sustained a cardiac arrest at her home. She was successfully resuscitated, but had massive brain damage due to the lack of oxygen to her brain, and was left comatose. After 2.5 months without improvement, her diagnosis was changed for whatever reason to that of persistent vegetative state. For the next 2 years, doctors attempted occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and other experimental therapy, hoping to return her to a state of awareness without success. In 1998, Schiavo's husband, Michael, petitioned the Sixth Circuit Court of Florida, which is where they're from, to remove her feeding tube pursuant to Florida law. He was opposed by Terri's parents, Robert and Mary Schindler. The court determined that Schiavo would not have wished to continue life-prolonging measures on April 24. And I kind of agree with that. It's some people let sentimentality get in the way of what's best for the patient, and I think that's what was going on with them. She would not have wished to continue life-prolonging measures, and on April 24, 2001, her feeding tube was removed for the first time, only to be reinserted several days later. On February 25, 2005, a Pinellas County judge again ordered the removal of Terri Schiavo's feeding tube. Several appeals and federal government intervention followed, which included U.S. President George W. Bush returning to Washington, D.C., to sign legislation moving the case to the federal courts. after appeals through the federal court system that upheld the original decision to remove the feeding tube. Staff at the Pinellas Park Hospice Facility disconnected the feeding tube on March 18, 2005. Wow. And Shivo died March 31st, 2005. So she lay there starving to death. And these, and these disgusting lawyers and politician vultures, which is what they are, made it legal for that to happen. So, anyway, the whole point of me bringing this up is that I remember seeing this in the news, and I don't know if it was one of the NBC nighttime kind of a documentary style news program, or if it was something like 60 Minutes, but they did a piece, one of them did a piece years and years ago, before she died, of her husband trying to prove that she was responsive and could answer and could, be functional and have a good quality of life, as his reasoning for not having her feeding tube removed. Well, he would talk to her. He'd come in and talk to her, and they've documented all of it with video and audio. And he would ask her questions, say, "How are you doing today? How are you feeling?" And he would always get the same response, different pitches, but there was never any English, never any spoken language. She would just moan and groan, and she was conscious. She was looking at him, but she couldn't even move her lips or anything. And it was the noises she would make were kind of comical. And I'm going to give you a sample of that in just a few minutes, and go into the radio program that actually did this other piece involving the Terri Schiavo case. And I will get into that after we take a short break. Hey, this is Harvey, your host of Satire Is Not Dead, reminding you that this program is brought to you by Cinescape Media. Visit cinescape.media and check out this program and all their other great programs. And now back to more of Satire Is Not Dead.
My dysfunctional family is functioning fine. I fit into my sister's clothes, she fits into mine. My mother's high on heroin, somebody pass the wine. My dysfunctional family is functioning fine. Thank you. How's yours? 1 anorexic, 2 overeaters, a vomiter, a crackhead, and a hoe.
All right, and we're back. And they're great song. All-inclusive. Well, not all-inclusive, but included several different social classes there. So there, I'm a man of the world. Everything's good again. So last we were talking about, I went into the Terri Schiavo case from years back. And what I was leading up to is this. There was a program years ago, also one of the greatest, if not the greatest, satellite and even radio before they got into satellite comedy programs called the Opie Anthony Show. I don't think it'll ever be topped. Their fan base was huge. Even to this day, they fell apart. They kind of fucked it up and let their personal differences get in the way. But there was a lot of moving parts to the problem. So anyway, their fan base is still out there. And there's guys that, like me, that listen to the archives. There's tons and years of archives. I listen to it all the time. So they did this whole thing when the Terri Schiavo case hit the news. They reported on it, and of course they put their funny spin on it. But one of the greatest things about their show was their fans were some of the most creative people creative fans that I've ever listened to get involved with the show. So what they would do is, in my last segment, I talked about Terry Schiavo's husband trying to keep her on the feeding tube and not letting her, pass away because she couldn't physically eat, so he had to put a feeding tube in her to keep her alive. That's the long and short of it. And so he would ask her. They did this documentary on her, where he would talk to her and ask her questions and say, "Hey, how are you doing? And how are you feeling?" And he would want to prove that she could actually respond to his. I guess you could just call it stimuli, because she wasn't really answering; she was just making these noises. And so I'm going to play some of that audio for you, so you can understand exactly what was going on.
Terry Schiavo's father talking to Terry.
Hi, Terry. It's 3:55. It's 3:55 on Friday. How are you, sweetie pie? Hi. You got a smile for your daddy? You got the smile for me? Huh? Can you give me a smile? You got a smile? Huh? You gonna say something?
I think this is where the idea of the movie The Grudge came from.
How are you? How are you? Are you okay? Are you alright?
No.
You had best unfuck yourself, or I will unscrew your hair and cut down your neck.
She's not really answering him.
Oh, shit.
You say hi, Dad. Can you say hi?
Oh, you little maggot! You make me want to vomit!
She could be telling him to shut up and leave her alone.
Choke yourself! Don't pull my fucking hand over there! I said choke yourself!
Is something hurting you?
Did your parents have any children that live? Yes, sir. How about they regret that?
All right, so you get the idea with that. It was those were her answering his questions, which brings us to the Opie Anthony Show. And there was some embellishment in that audio clip, as you could clearly hear, just to make it a little bit entertaining. But it moves us to the Opie Anthony program. They did this every Tuesday, and I don't remember what year span it was. They would do a theme every Tuesday on their show called Rock Scream Tuesday. And they had an audio file that they would play just to signify that today is Rock Scream Tuesday. And I'll play that for you now, because this is all leading up to what some very creative listener did for them and submitted it to their show, and they played it. So it was just a goofy theme for Tuesday, and it was kind of a throwback to the hair bands of that time, the heavy metal or hard rock bands that would sing that in that way. You know, Ronnie James Dio and Iron Maiden had that kind of vocal style, and so it was cute. You know, it was something different on Tuesday. And so some creative listener they had, whenever this whole Terry Schiavo thing, you think of the previous audio file I played of her husband asking her questions, took parts of that and incorporated it into the Rock Scream Tuesday thing. And I'll play that for you now. Now, warning you, this is highly insensitive, but I think it's very funny and done by a very creative person. And so here we go. So that was the product of a very creative listener putting in the work to submit something to the Opie Anthony Show. And so, but that's not all. But look, hey, we need a laugh. We all need a laugh right now, right? There are some other ones, but I'll let you listen to that clip one more time before we move on to others. Then they just went nuts with it. They picked up the ball and ran like mad.
There's something hurting. Does your head hurt?
You're so ugly you could be a modern art master.
Does anything hurt you? Does your mouth hurt?
Does your mouth hurt? What have you been doing?
Does your back hurt?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Does your leg hurt?
Stop whining. Stop whining. Stop it.
Does your ears
Stop
hurt?
whining. It's not a tumor. Now we're having fun.
All right.
So believe it or not, there was actually more than that. They actually went on. Oh Lord, they actually went on with this for several days. I don't know if they were consecutive days, but they still just let her rip, and it was one of the funniest things. It's not going to win you any any points as far as being a tasteful or tactful person, but hey, you know what? It's funny. Funny is funny. It's distasteful. Yeah, it's good. That's all right. I love it. It makes me laugh, which I don't know what that says about me, but I enjoyed it. Now, it's important for me to point out here that a few minutes ago, I misspoke in the audio clips that you've been hearing. It's her father asking her questions, and her parents are the ones who wanted to keep the feeding tube in, and her husband wanted to have it removed because he didn't think she would have wanted to live that way, even though it makes no difference in the context of what I'm doing here. Still thought it was, I didn't want to contradict myself from the beginning to the end. But I'm going to play the final audio clip I have that I actually put together myself. But first I wanted to just tell everybody, I hope you have a safe and happy new year. And I personally look forward to putting a round into the temple of 2020 and rolling its lifeless body into a ditch and ushering in 2021. Yeah, a man can dream, can he? But will 2021 be any different than 2020? We'll see. We'll find out soon enough. So, once again, have a happy new year, and I will see you next week, the first week of 2021. So let's close out this monstrosity for this podcast.
You got a smile for me? Yeah? Can you give me a smile? You got a smile? Yeah? You gonna say something?